Good morning, America. How are you? This is the show Pushback. Today on the 19th day of December, a Saturday, 6 days before Christmas. And the show is brought to you by Patriot Radio and Mr. Todd Bartlett and Normal America, which is getting harder and harder to find these days, and our great friend, Robert Knorr. Good morning, men.
Morning.
So
Morning.
I hope that may both of you and the rest of our listeners be happy and safe and healthy, and may you be living with ease. One of the great things about America is that we leave each other the hell alone. Isn't that a great concept? Another is that our form of government is based on the principle that as a government, you can't make laws or do anything to us without our permission or consent. That is the entire underpinning as to what makes us different than every other country in the world. But whose job is it to pursue the truth? To defend America, to stand up for the American way of life. That is the job of a free people for the American way of life. In 200 years from now, it will be judged that we are responsible for this thing that's happening now. It's our responsibility at this point in time to be responsible for also what happens next. Like it or not, as I was just telling Rob before we went on air, this is our modern day Thermopylae. These are the hot gates that the 300 stood with Leonidas against Xerxes and the Persians. Fate and history called to us and have tapped us on the shoulder to jump out on the ice, like my hockey coach used to say, and jump out on the ice and make a play, regardless if we have 300 Spartans with us or not. It's our time, whether we like it or not. One of the things that indeed makes America great is that we get the opportunity to fight the tyranny and the despotism of domestic progressives and communists under the organizing principles found in the American Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, in order to resist the horrors of their depravity, of these progressives and these communists. There's no other way to define them. So through that lens, I feel honored, literally honored, by the fact that we share these values not only with our American forefathers, but with guys like Leonidas and his 300 Spartans. There is no choice. If you're pursuing good, this is our only option. They had their time. Now we have ours. So what are you prepared to do? I'll tell you what Rob Knorr and Carlos Saldivia and Todd Bartlett are prepared to do. And make no mistake, as our opening chess move, we are calling to vote out all weakling Republicans, swamp Republicans that gave up on us so quickly. There will be other chess moves, I guarantee you. The high road. They talk about the high road all the time. This is the road. Weak-willed Republicans in history, in the midst of what amounts to democratic policy that offers taxing the rich and student loan forgiveness by a man who needs help walking on and off stage. This is what weak-willed Republicans accomplished. So now, we're not trying to overturn the election. We just are demanding the legitimate results of the election. Consider this. We have gone from the state's burden to prove the legal safeguards to prevent fraud were in place to the burden now being on the general public to prove that there was fraud. This is where we are in this country right now in 2020. This is what weakling Republicans allowed to happen to our republic, starting with the governor and the Secretary of State in Georgia. I don't believe anybody. I don't believe anything being told to me, except to a person, these people are monsters. So, Rob, if there's evidence before January 20th that there was election fraud, okay, why shouldn't 45 concede and stay in office till he proved that there was enough evidence to turn back the election with the required electoral votes? Given that, according to the rallies, 45 had, tens of thousands of people, and Biden had on average 10 people, not including a staff. Other than the Twitterari, what kind of pushback could they realistically muster? I mean, wouldn't this be a true representation of what most of us saw in real time in our lives, confirming our suspicions in real time on the battleground?
Yeah, I mean, look, like, to answer the latter part of that first, what would they do, right? So the idea is this, like, basically the question is, if there's definitive evidence proved that is made public that this election was stolen from Donald Trump, why should he leave? Even if the courts and other groups decide to not take up these cases. And it's a great question. He shouldn't leave if that evidence is transparent and brought forth to the American people. What would they do? Well, they would do what they always do. They would use their institutions to demonize people that disagreed with them. They would use their police force to come and arrest people. They would use PayPal and social media platforms to ban people that had wrongthink. That's what they would do. But if there's one lesson that we've learned, they have power. The establishment and these institutions that seek to censor us and to put forth this globalist, communist garbage that they're trying to put forth, to transfer wealth even greater to the richer, to take away the rights of the average American, regardless of their political ideology, skin color, gender, etc. Their power comes because we have consented to them having power. And if you don't believe me, look at how many times they try to cancel someone for having wrongthink. Oh, Tucker Carlson, did you hear what his segment said the other day? We're going to call all of his advertisers and get him banned. Did that work? It didn't. The only time it works is when people say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. When you make this apology to them, you have given them power. It will never be enough. Ask Mayor Wheeler in Portland as they screamed at him again the other day because he refuses to totally disband the police. Even though he's given in to almost everything Antifa wants, it'll never be enough. And so that's what they'll do. But the lesson is, that's exactly why Trump shouldn't concede. Because the concession is the power. Once you consent to give them power, that's what gives them power. If you just say, no, I don't care, what are you going to do about it? They have nothing. They'll try to publicly shame you. So what? We don't care. We're not going to listen to them. They'll call your employer, as they've done to me many a time. I don't care. Call them. I don't care. Right. They'll make threats. They'll call you mean names. They'll get you banned from Facebook and Twitter. I don't care. Right? That's the mentality that we have to have. The more you worry about these immoral, hypocritical people that only want to have more power over
monsters.
You. That's right.
Monsters.
The more you're concerned about their opinion of you, the less free will and freedom that you have. So, to answer your question, they won't do anything. They'll continue to do.
Certainly not 80 million of them.
That's right.
Certainly, if any indication of how they supported Biden is any indication of how they are going to fight back against this, I don't see a fight.
And they'll riot in the streets in Democratic-controlled areas that allow them to riot in the streets. That's what they'll do. That's fine.
Right. But I think that there's a chess move for that too now, especially starting last week with the Proud Boys mobilizing and being out in the streets, looking to even the score. Not that you and I, either of us, believe in violence, but we will discuss after we bring in Todd here the reason why society needs violent men. Good morning, Todd. I know that the week rolled on, I had the question for you for today, way before this became a story. But again, it shows how unspeakably racist is the fact that Black people aren't the first one immunized for the COVID vaccine. Has anybody asked Williamsport Area School Board member Jennifer Lake about this vile and loathsome oversight?
Yeah, Jen's been kind of quiet this week, whether it's regarding, the school going full remote, whether it's the Myrtle Beach case, whether it's the vaccine that you're taking with the cap on the end of the syringe still, the cap on the needle still on, as if you're the Speaker of the House and Nancy Pelosi, whether it's
the fake immunization.
Excuse me?
The fake immunization.
Fake immunization, the real fainting by a nurse that they then put back on camera. That happened. The fake depressing of the plunger. I mean,
the fainting was real.
My late family doctor, right, who passed away here in, I think it's 2020. I remember getting immunized back in the day as a kid. I totally remember it. And he was the fastest guy with the shot, as we called it, in the history of shots. I dare say when he would do that, you knew when he was depressing the plunger. It goes like this. Your thumb goes like this into the plunger. Right. It's not using your pointy finger.
And there's pressure that is applied.
With an empty syringe.
Right.
This is what we're being shown as theater of the mind. It's ridiculous on its face. To your point on the racism side, they can't even get it right to get the vaccine to the most vulnerable.
Right. Right.
Right. So how are they going to get it right on the basis of race?
Right. That's the context.
But by the way, we're just shy of 11:15. It's your opening point of Leonidas. Mm-hmm. Apparently, he has just addressed the team in Indianapolis, and he has said, "Buckeyes, prepare for glory."
Yeah. People still watch football?
That never happened. So
he didn't say it, but I think Coach Day might have said it.
So Coach Bartlett, unfortunately, has a lot of things happening in his life that we're all very, very excited about. And he is in an undisclosed location, basically setting up shop for his next adventure. And so we want to give him a couple of minutes to give us a very quick roundup. And the rest of the show, it's going to be Robert and I against the world, back to back.
So, Mark Levin talks about, in his show Open, from an undisclosed bunker, mm-hmm. right? So the undisclosed Wendy Bell radio bunker is coming to fruition. And once she's able to unveil the inner workings of the bunker, which will remain in an undisclosed location for obvious reasons, it will be something to be seen. There were some pieces put together this week that I think everybody's going to be very proud of and really excited about. And then the other big news that I have to share is over the last couple of weeks, there have been multiple cases coming out of the Pennsylvania State Attorney General's office. One is the Ziegler case in conjunction with Lycoming County Children and Youth in regard to alleged child abuse and child endangerment. And then the other case that just hit this week was with regard to the Williamsport Bureau of Police and an officer named Durr with allegations of not pressing charges in exchange for different inappropriate acts by, different suspects. And that has now been brought forward by the State Attorney General's office for.
Could you give us a real quick overview of the first case? Just a real quick 5-second, 10-second overview of the first case.
On the Ziegler case?
Yeah.
There's two parents locally that have been alleged to have taken on a years long situation, and it's all allegations. They're gonna have their day in court, endangering the lives of their children. It's a disturbing case, to say the least. The allegations are outlined in the complaint and in the, I believe it's the affidavits that were brought forward.
How many kids?
They did talk to the kids.
How many kids?
Obviously, during the course of the investigation, and it's a really ugly case.
How many kids?
There's 3 younger kids, and then there are multiple older kids that are now adults in that case.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really ugly case. And my point being that if the state attorney general has taken 2 referrals already from Lycoming County District Attorney Ryan Gardner, and in these 2 cases, you've had arrests brought forward and charges brought forward by the state attorney general's office in a child abuse, child endangerment case in the Ziegler case, and then, of course, inappropriate behavior by a member of the Williamsport Bureau of Police or a member of law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
If those 2 cases have been brought forward by the state attorney general's office, if anybody thinks for one moment that the office of Josh Shapiro and state attorney general is not going to bring the Myrtle Beach case to fruition in this state and potentially turned over to Myrtle Beach and Horry County authorities in South Carolina for prosecution there, you are sorely mistaken.
Yeah. And, oh, by the way, the first 2 cases don't have video. The Myrtle Beach case has multiple video evidence.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, not a good day at Black Rock for the people that are being accused of misconduct in the Myrtle Beach incident. What else you got?
This next week, going into the holiday, and I'll let you guys kind of let the cat out of the bag here in a little bit, depending on national and current events. I just got to tell you, kind of missed this at Thanksgiving, but this Christmas coming up, a week from this weekend, professionally, it has all the makings of being the best Christmas in the history of my career. And then looking ahead at 2021 and what we know is coming right around the corner is something you can't even dream of. I mean, Carlos, I know you've done a lot with Hollywood. I know you've done a lot of scripts, a lot of movies. I'm just telling you, in TV, Hollywood could not write this story.
No, and no one deserves it better than you. If it could be punctuated with a Marconi and a Pulitzer, that would be great. And if you could remember Robert and I at some point, that would be nice too.
What's your name again?
Yeah. Too many Ohio State jokes to.
That's right. Okay, you lost us with the Buckeyes. What is a Buckeye?
I was going to leave you with this. Go Bucks.
Yeah. Huh? The Pirates?
Well, we love you.
They still the team?
I think there's
do.
some there. Spend nutting,
It's
win
the
nutting,
home-
right? Yeah.
The home of Roberta Clemente. Show some respect.
Always.
So, Godspeed to you and your family. You deserve the best. And what a blessing. And for those of you that don't know, we're taking next week off, next Saturday. So we're going to be with our families and enjoying the holiday. But we won't be back until the following Saturday, January 2nd, and loaded for bear. Yes. Tom.
I do want to make note, just so everybody's aware, we have all gotten together, including Rob, because of the snowstorm that hit the state here earlier this week. Carlos, Rob, and Todd have all agreed we are going to park our vehicles in a Williamsport Parking Authority parking deck in advance of the show, so that everyone can have all the streets in Williamsport plowed and bulldozed out, days, almost a week later after the storm, because the great leadership of Mayor Derek Slaughter in his first term and only term as mayor. Did I just let that out of my mouth? I'm so sorry. Demonstrating on a daily basis that he cannot lead at all. His road was plowed. His street where he lives, it was plowed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, essential employees, which, by the way, we've talked about this with regard to the governor's shutdown, all employees are essential.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've established that.
Yep.
Now you can take the local bus they'll come get you and bring you to work back and forth because, you can't even get out of your freaking driveway because he doesn't know any better. Because, now listen, you can't, fellas, don't blame him. You can't blame him. 2 reasons you can't blame him. And this is Todd Bartlett. You can email me, news@talkwaynessport.com. I'm saying it on a Saturday. Here's the 2 reasons nobody pushes back on Mayor Derek Slaughter. Dare I say it? You can't push back because he's black. Wait. That was qualifying when he was going to become the mayor. It was You had to vote for him. And listen to this.
Because if not, you're a racist.
Before you say I'm speaking out of school, guess who was the first guy in the pool endorsing the guy when he ran for mayor? Me, this guy. Worst decision of my life to ever endorse Derek Slaughter, leading from behind again. So, Derek, here's the plan. The next time Frosty is going to dump the snow, okay, tell everybody to go park in the parking decks for free so you can clean the streets.
So
it's even better than this. Oh, by the way, the other reason you can't criticize him, he's learning on the job. He's a first-time mayor. But you know what? All that extensive 2 years on council was why he was qualified to be the mayor.
Right. Well,
when he's on the finance committee, that he was finding numbers that he claimed he could find, then now they're shuffling money around.
Right. Well,
really, Mayor?
Here's the context of why Todd's upset. It's my understanding that the mayor came out with a presser that basically said that you're going to have to be patient with us in plowing the streets in the upcoming storm because many of our drivers have COVID. Is that correct? Is that what he said?
Or in COVID quarantine. Have we heard this before?
Right. All right. So here's the question. And we could ask Rob Knorr at some point. Whose job is it to administrate when people are sick to cover jobs that are required when you have weather emergencies? Well, it's the mayor's job, isn't it? So he's saying he's passing the buck to the people, saying that we have to be patient. No, find someone to drive those trucks and plow the streets as usual. But what he meant when he was running for mayor by transparency, he didn't mean transparency. He wasn't running on transparency. He was running on accountability. But once he gets elected, the accountability disappears. And this is where he needed to be accountable. Okay. It needed to be tacit. It needed to be silent. It needed to be unnoticed. Oh, the streets got plowed. Like it never happened. Like there was no problem. Like there was no COVID. That's what a regular mayor would do. It would never be an issue at all. Okay. And then you had the fire chief come out and say, well, there's a lot of snow, so you have to forgive us. There's a lot of snow everywhere, right? Is every single police department or every single fire department chief talking about COVID and the plows? You tell me if it's true in your town, Rob. Is everybody apologizing because of the snow? No, they're just doing it, right?
Right.
You don't put out a presser saying that, just do it. Just do it. And keep working hard. That's what you get paid to do. Okay? And we're still a sovereign. We're paying you. So do it. Yes, Todd.
Yes, I just want to give you an example. Okay? I'm not going to give away the location where I am. I'm not going to give you the company until the time is right. Okay?
It's north of Sarasota.
Let's just say this. The company that I'm now working with has infrastructure, time, treasure, talent, amongst other things. But just let's use time, treasure, talent. Okay, the infrastructure they have, they were able to plow, salt, shovel, all of the infrastructure. Okay, here in Western PA. In real time. Now, this is a private enterprise.
Mm-hmm. You mean like Texas? Like Texas counted 11 million votes in one night?
Yeah. This is not an endless budget in a city,
right?
Where this guy claims better government, better people.
Right.
You can't even plow the street.
Right.
You know, the one with the potholes in it that you didn't fix? That
Right.
one.
Yep.
I mean, it's so bad right now. Derek Slaughter's calling the former mayor Gabe Campana for the shoulder to cry on because I'm tearing apart Derek Slaughter with the hashtag getting slaughtered. And here's the kicker. It's all true.
Well, that's
So
look
if
in
your
his
guys are out with
defense.
COVID, here's what you do. You call the county, you call the municipalities that are beside you, just like mutual aid for fire, for law enforcement, all that. That's what you do. If that fails, you go to private enterprise and go, guess what? We're doing an emergency contract, and you guys are going to have to plow the streets. Get the bulldozers out, call Hall Bakers, call whoever you got to call, HRI, and start moving the snow.
Yeah, but that requires
No,
capacity.
no.
That requires capacity, and that requires relationships. And
No.
he doesn't have those.
But I'm a first-term mayor, one and only, one and done mayor. You got to give me a break.
Yeah.
Oh, and if you question that one, you can't do that because I'm black.
Right.
Really, dude?
Yeah. But
In
we're
his
racist
defense, though, elected leaders aren't used to actual journalists, asking difficult questions. So he didn't anticipate that when he took the job, right?
Yeah. Well, what started all of this, what started, the rift between Todd and the mayor is that the mayor told him 3 times and he gave him his word that he would debate. And at the last second, he pulled the Biden and said, no, we're not doing it. And we're not debating.
No,
And,
he didn't say it. His
well,
team around him said, you better
whatever.
not show
For
because
all
he's going to ask you about Myrtle Beach and it'll be
Right.
the end of your political career forever.
Well, but the point is that he wasn't held, he wasn't accountable. He said he would be, and he went back on his word. That's before he was mayor.
I mean, Rob, can you imagine this? I'm this excited and the game hadn't even kicked off yet.
We'll see if you're that excited at the end of the game. Who are they even playing? I didn't know people.
See, that's exactly right.
Who are they playing? Toledo?
Northwestern.
Oh, I'm just amazed.
Taking the opponent lightly.
I think
A
we're
real
breaking news here that people still watch football. That's fantastic. In fairness, I watched some Steeler games until they started to crap the bed. Now,
It's nice that Ohio State is playing real teams instead of Toledo. So who's
Hey,
next? Central Florida.
Listen, before you start banging
It's a question, not a judgment.
They wanted to play another game when the cowards up north backed out. They wanted to play Ohio University, not Toledo. They wanted to play Ohio.
Wow.
Because we still think Toledo's been annexed by the state up north.
Oh, I see. Well, let me know how the Troy State game goes. All right. All right then. We're gonna let you go. We got a show. We have a show to run.
I know.
At 11:29.
I want to give you a jumping off point. I was on a WebEx on Monday. I think it was this last Monday with Governor Wolf and Governor Murphy.
Okay.
And they were talking about how Congress needed to step in and the federal government needed to step in and provide more economic relief.
No.
These were my 2 questions, and you guys can use this the rest of the day because neither of them have been answered in writing or on TV or radio in the WebEx. My first question was to both governors, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, why do you keep asking the federal government for funding when your orders in your specific states are shutting down specific sectors of the economy? Why are you doing that? No response. The follow-up was, you've been given X number of billions of dollars each state, right, in COVID relief money. Why hasn't it all been allocated and or spent? And if so, what's the plan between now and the end of the year to do that? Well, we come to find out today with the Spotlight PA story that the mortgage and rent relief that was already allocated had to be spent by November 30th. Guess what didn't happen, Carlos and Rob? I believe it's nearly $100 million hasn't been allocated in mortgage and rent relief. And that money is now gone from that program and being reallocated, I believe, to the Department of Corrections.
Wow.
Over $100 million. Not to be technical. They can't do anything. So stop telling us what to do. And how much trust, be honest. And this is a question that I've asked before in private, so I'll ask it now in public. How much more would you have trust? And try to center your mind as to what you would have done if the governor would have said this. None of us know what this is about. This is a new frontier. We've never encountered this. We don't know how lethal it is or how non-lethal it is. We don't know who it kills, who it doesn't kill. But we will do everything to help you. And you should do whatever you think is right for your family and your business. And we will stand by and help you in any way possible that we can help you. And as we learn, we will immediately share that with you. What would you guys have done? Would you have trusted that person?
Would have been much better.
Much better.
This is the truth. I said this from the get. We all understand that we are a minority as far as our political beliefs in the country. Like, I think that all three of us understood the importance of recognizing liberty. And there were more people that recognized the importance of the economy when it came to the initial reaction to COVID that we saw started to come out in March. But I get that we're not everyone. I wish more people thought like me, but fair enough. I said from the get-go that even though I was against the lockdowns, I could have accepted the lockdowns if we had total transparency and if we had leaders that we could trust would constantly reevaluate the situation and would be honest when the science and when the data pointed to the fact that these lockdowns were a mistake. Everybody can accept that your leaders will make mistakes, especially in a crazy situation like with a virus that seems to be new. I get it. No one's perfect. We all understand that. There is not 50 years from now, when we could look back, there will not be one leader that we'll be able to point to and say they did everything exactly right. And I mean, in the United States, in the world,
not even Churchill,
at the local,
not even Churchill.
Right. Like it just won't happen. There were always going to be slight things you could have done better. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, anytime a leader makes a mistake, that it's just, we should never listen to anything they'd say. What I am going to tell you is that benefit of the doubt applies when the leaders are behaving in a transparent way with honesty and when they are making the same sacrifices that they are asking of other people. When they are not, when we see over and over again that the leaders tell us, you can't enjoy Thanksgiving dinner with your family, but we're going to go out to a restaurant. You can't go get your haircut, but we're going to, right? These constant hypocrisies, it's what makes it goes beyond, well, it was just a mistake. They tried their best and they failed. Now they didn't try their best. Over and over, they've showed us that their reactions were not about what was best for the average person in this country. It was what was best for them. How do they consolidate more power? How can they use this to pass agenda? I just played the clip on my show here last week of Justin Trudeau. He said, COVID has brought us an opportunity to institute a bunch of social policies that we wanted before COVID. That's what it was about. They have an idea of their social control that they want to levy. They like socialism. They like globalism. They like massive government power. And like everything, they will not leave this crisis go to waste. The problem is when you think, how can I personally or my party take advantage of this crisis in order to consolidate more power? Even if you think you're well-intended, you don't have the people's best interest at heart. You have your agenda at heart. And that's why I have no respect for Tom Wolf. When he could look you in the face, it comes down to this. For anyone who has any doubt of what I'm saying, Tom Wolf could have said the following. I understand that people are suffering mightily because of the great sacrifices we've asked the people of Pennsylvania to make. Many of you are losing your businesses, you're losing your jobs, you're losing your assets. You don't know how you could put food on the table. We're going to do our best to help you, but we understand that you are suffering, and we ask that you continue to sacrifice a little longer while we get through this disease. But that's not what Tom Wolf said. He said, you're worried you're losing your job? What did he call them? You're a coward.
Cowards.
You're a coward, he said. You've given in to coronavirus. You're a coward who's lost to it if you're upset because of the lockdowns. And I will take away your license to operate your business. And then what did he do? 2 weeks after he made that statement, he violated the very social distance orders he called you a coward for violating. And I don't know if you noticed, Carlos, but it's been kind of a theme of the Normal America show here in the past week of pointing out this hypocrisy. I'm sick and tired of these people, particularly on the left, that think that
more Mr. Nice Guy.
Right, I don't care anymore. That think that they could judge you, not just judge you, but advocate that you be punished criminally or financially for not listening to the scientific orders. Yet they themselves have no problem violating those orders when they see fit. Oh, they want to go march with Black Lives Matter? They want to violate social distance orders? No problem. Perfectly reasonable.
We can get $1,000 to sign 1,000 doctors to sign a piece of paper to say it's okay. You have a doctor's note,
right?
Signed by 1,000 doctors.
So look, it's one thing to have YouTube personalities or your friend down the street that's being a hypocrite. That's one thing. We'll discuss that. That's fine. But when the people making the orders are engaged in this hypocrisy, right? And Todd could tell better than me at the outset of this. For those of you who don't know, in Pennsylvania, there were businesses that were deemed exempt from the lockdown orders. So whether it be a total lockdown or whether it be what capacity you could operate at and things like that, certain businesses got exempt. Were there any connections to the governor with many of those businesses that got exemptions, Todd? Oh, yes, there were. So it wasn't about health. It was, do you have a personal did you donate to Tom Wolf's campaign? Do you have a personal relationship with Tom Wolf? Well, then you're deemed essential. You don't have to worry about providing for your family. Now, the rest of us plebes, that live paycheck to paycheck, screw off, is what Tom Wolf calls us cowards if we're worried about paying. That's the hypocrisy I care about, and that's why I'm so harsh when I see hypocrisy at the lower levels. Because the reason Tom Wolf's hypocrisy is allowed to stand is because there aren't enough people that say, no, enough is enough. Tom Wolf should have had 10,000 people outside of his home the day he violated his own social distance orders, filing a citizen's arrest that he be charged to the maximum extent of what his orders called for. He should no longer be allowed to operate a business. He's a coward, according to his own language. But instead, he gets away with it. And so does Newsom, and so does Cuomo, and so does Whitmer, and so does Murphy, and so does Lightfoot. Over and over and over, these Democratic leaders judge you morally as inferior and suggest penalties from the government against you for violating the very orders that they themselves refuse to follow.
Yep. And that's the case right there. Todd.
Final thought, and then I got to go, guys. Merry Christmas, first of all.
Thank you.
I did just hear back. I did just hear back from people close to the mayor. They said that the criticism is unwarranted because this is the first time in the Slaughter administration they've had to deal with snow, so he gets a pass. Sorry, no, it's not the first time snow's fallen in the history of time.
Right. We know how to do this already.
Get a clue. That's
we know how to do this.
Second thing,
he can't find drivers to drive the plows, but he found $850,000 in a drawer. Okay,
right, that they didn't know until after he put the budget forward. It's a whole other story.
Right.
I just wanted to point out an observation that in fact, Carlos is wearing a scarlet colored shirt. Rob is wearing a gray colored shirt.
It's orange
on the day. Well, in the light, it looks like it's scarlet.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you either change your lighting or go out in the woods looking for deer. Hey, go Bucks. Appreciate you guys.
All right.
And looking forward to the next show. Merry Christmas.
We'll talk to you soon.
Happy New Year, too, because we're not back till the 2nd, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Wendy Bell Radio.
All right,
Staying strong into the new year.
So, to just follow up on what you were saying, Rob, there's an old adage that, in the classics, I want to say it's Aristotle, but it could be anybody, that the serpent that resides in man is you work, Ali. it's obvious that by degrees the Democrats can slide that denigration now to you starve, I'll eat. Correct?
Yep. Yep.
And this is why I call them monsters. This is why I can't forgive them. And this is something beyond. And you talk about that's the reason why I wanted to lead you into the next thing is your riff on these people being incompetent versus them being just negligent. Okay, it's a huge divide, no?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And look, one, it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The results are the same. Let's look and say we want to go forward. We want to do policies that are best going forward. So does it matter if A, the people that are instituting those policies were negligent and they didn't have people's best interests at heart? They had political agendas for control at heart? Or B, that they were just grossly incompetent and didn't know things like you shouldn't force nursing homes to accept COVID patients, which predictably led to tens of thousands of deaths. Why does that scenario, does it matter that they were just incompetent or that they were corrupt? Does that matter going forward? They weren't corrupt, Rob, they were just incompetent. But now you need to shut up and listen to them. Despite the fact their incompetence was such that it was something so incompetent that the average person with no medical experience would say, oh, what's that? There's a virus that's got the potential to really affect a large portion of the population. That'll probably affect the elderly and people with comorbidities first. Every single one of us with no medical experience would be able to come to that conclusion. And yet, our leaders in Pennsylvania, they were unable to come to that conclusion. They came to the conclusion, what we should do is intentionally put COVID patients in nursing homes, in facilities where they're shoulder to shoulder with the people that are most at risk from COVID. That's the decision they came up to. So does it matter if that decision was born of incompetence or corruption? But I'll tell you this, it doesn't matter, right? But their reaction, if it was incompetence, they would have said, my God, we're sorry. That was a horrible mistake. Tens of thousands of people died. Now we know more about the disease. We won't make the same mistake. That's not what they said. Instead, they pointed to the deaths and said, see, this is proof that we need to lock down people. Now, I get in the chat a lot of tough guys that want to say, but I had a loved one that died, and it's your fault, Rob. It's people like you that refuse to endorse the lockdowns. Well, if that's your mentality, all of the people that die in the next 15 years as a result of the economic lockdown that we've received, is it your fault? Are you going to look at that and say, oh, my bad, I advocated for the lockdowns, which predictably led to a recession or depression, which led to increased suicides and all of these other things that we see, already that we see. That's my fault. No, you won't say that because you're a coward, because you're a hypocrite. That's who these people are. They think that it's easy when you're wealthy enough to sit in your fancy house and say, I don't understand why people are upset they can't go to work. I don't understand why people are upset they can't go visit their parents in the nursing home. Why can't everyone just sit comfortably in the house? Show me any evidence that the lockdowns that are being suggested were beneficial. We now know that the same people like you piece of garbage that's on the chat, that probably advocated locking down schools, we now know that everyone from the World Health Organization to the CDC says that locking down those schools actually had no benefit whatsoever. In fact, the opposite. It led to more children dying than from COVID. So that blood's on your hands.
Right.
And you have the nerve to sit there and accuse other people. Oh, if you didn't want to just weld yourself in the house, then you have blood on your hands. That's garbage.
Right. And it's their own people talking. It's not the right. It's not the center. It's their own people saying, the CDC, the people that they control, the deep state. And then on top of that, Rob, it gets better. If you could actually enable sharing, I could put up the tweet. Did you happen to see the greatest tweet of the week by Andrew Yang? That guy that everyone says is so together, and he's got it all together, and he's just a calming voice and a calming presence in the Democratic Party. This is the tweet. You ready? Andrew Yang, is there a way for someone to easily show that they have been vaccinated, like a barcode they can download to their phone? There ought to be. And then he had enough characters to put, and if necessary, on the tweet, he had enough characters left to put, if necessary, we'll put golden stars on their lapels. No?
I don't know. Did he say that? I know people said that.
No, I'm saying that.
Yeah, right.
I mean, characters to be able to write that,
and
because
look,
it's literally the same thing. What is wrong with people? Why can't they get their heads around? And this is the argument of negligence and incompetent. So is Andrew Yang incompetent, or is he just wily and slippery?
He's incompetent. I don't think Andrew Yang's a bad person. He's a useful tool. There's a lot of people in the chat. You know what the problem is, Carlos? Just leave these people talk, and they'll tell you what they read. You know what the problem is, according to the people in the chat right now?
Who they are.
You know what the problem is? It's capitalism. You see? So they're telling you what this is really about. We want to usher in this socialist communist utopia. It's worked so well all over the world, right?
Yeah. Like Pfizer and Moderna aren't making any money.
Right, the Holodomor, all of this stuff, 50 million dead in the Soviet Union, 100 million dead in China. That's the system we need, right? The irony is, the very lockdown policies that they're advocating for, who have they enriched? If they enriched the workers, like they claim to want, no, they've enriched Jeff Bezos, which these liberal dupes are more than happy to embrace. Oh, we need more lockdowns. Jeff Bezos needs more money. Bill Gates needs more money. Let's just lock everything down and usher in our communist utopia. It's unbelievable. They're the most disingenuous people. And they'll sit there and browbeat, you wanted grandma to die. If you don't endorse my communist utopia, you wanted grandma to die. That's the system. It's that system's fault. That's their argument. Well, then just come out and say it. Stop using the virus as a pretext. Here's an idea. Maybe the problem that we're seeing with government control, the solution's not to give more government control. Maybe when the system you're advocating for against capitalism and corporations is enriching corporations, maybe your system is flawed and failed. That's the problem. The problem's not, capitalism crushed us. The problem is that government bureaucrats, knowing nothing about this disease, locked down the economy and intentionally spread COVID to the most vulnerable populations. The problem is a bunch of so-called socialist communists like you people are complete hypocrites that don't believe in the idea of self-responsibility, and so you want the government to force upon everyone the rejection of the freedoms that made this country great in the first place. That's the problem. And you sit on your moral high horse like you're making some sort of intellectual point. Oh, the problem's not that we shut down schools. The problem's that we don't give schools enough money. No, the problem is that the socialist teachers unions that are running these schools are some of the most racist, disastrous organizations in this country. We continually...
Lazy slobs for you in the chat. Lazy slobs. That's what they are, these unions. Lazy slobs. You didn't earn it. You don't deserve it. So,
and let's be honest, these schools, right? Constantly we give them more money. Oh, the problem is if we just gave more money to these schools, to the teachers union. If we give more money to the teachers unions, that would solve. Meanwhile, the teachers unions are against the only form of schools that we see that are actually improving, particularly in the inner city, that of charter schools. Well, the teachers unions and the Democrats are totally against that. But give them more money. In fact, give them more money, but don't force them to work. The teachers don't actually want to go in class and teach. And this idea, well, students will be able to get education at home, online learning. We all know that that's garbage. We know that with particular younger students, right?
What's the fail rate?
We see that it's increasing.
Astronomical fail rates. Can I tell you something? I'm shocked that they admitted it. They admitted that the rates are high. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that they didn't cover it up and say, no, that's a lie. Like that's fake news. I'm shocked. And it, as high in some districts, Rob, are you ready for this? Is 80%. 80%. of fail rates with these online school and all these mechanisms that they've applied. I want to go back to the point though, where you said that these people that are the experts actually don't know what they're doing. Did you happen to see the American Institute of Economic Research article this week? And I don't know if I sent it to you, but the headline, and if you could enable sharing, I could put it up.
It should be enabled.
The decimal point that blew up the world. Did you read that article?
No.
Okay. The article basically states that Fauci made a mistake in interpreting the infections with cases. And the numbers, if you believe what Fauci interpreted, were 0.1% death rate for cases, where it should have been 0.01. This guy is an expert. He can't read, and it wasn't a typo. He misread it and misinterpreted it. So there's a huge difference between infections and cases. And the best example for me to be able to explain this to a person, or what I'm striving to do in our show is to explain it to a 6-year-old so they could understand, is that there are people that get infected that never know they had it. Just because you get infected, which is what happens when you test positive, is that correct? Doesn't mean that you are a case. So let me put up the article. I published it. Host disabled participant screen sharing because he doesn't like Latinos.
Is that what it says?
That's what it says.
It says on my thing when I go to screen share, it says, try now.
Oh, shit. There you go. All right. So this is what it looks like. Can you see it?
Yeah.
The Decimal Point That Blew Up the World by Jeffrey Tucker. And it's a medium-sized read. It's not a short read, but it's a medium-sized read. And it really talks, it talks about, Fauci making a mistake. And I think this paragraph says that Fauci was claiming what, in fact, he could not know, conflating two distinct data sets and extrapolating in ways that allowed him to make a completely unsupported claim that very obviously turned out to be false. You shouldn't be able to make those type of mistakes if you're Dr. Fauci and you are the one person, basically, that the entire government and some other governments across the world are counting on, right? That's an unforgivable mistake.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of how many with Dr. Fauci? Remember when he lied to us and said that?
So here's a great thing. So the case fatality rate is one thing, okay, and 4 cases, 1 fatality. Infection fatality rate is much different, okay, and as it says, based on this graphic alone, you can see why it becomes crucial to keep these terms straight. And it goes on and talks about in more detail what it is. It's a very, very, very good article, and it really delineates the difference between cases and infections. It's okay to have a lot of infections. As a matter of fact, if you're trying to get herd immunity, that's kind of like what the Lycoming County coroner said last week. You want to reach that stage, but cases are altogether different. And no matter what anyone says on the chat, they're monsters because on top of everything else that they did, they failed to continually protect the people who are most at risk in getting the disease. And for that, you not only get an F, you should be recalled.
Look, it's both
the Secretary of Health, who, oh, by the way, was eating out without a mask last week in Delaware. I don't know if you saw the photo of that, did you? Her and her husband.
Yeah, I did.
And the governor should be recalled. And this is criminal. This is just criminal. Tell me the story of what happened last night when you went out for the light show, and what did you observe with respect to restaurants, and give me your riff on that.
Okay, so one of the problems is that when we look at the signs, so for example, one of the courts in California just ruled against Gavin Newsom's lockdown order of restaurants, particularly outdoor dining. And he said because there is no scientific proof whatsoever that was presented by the government that said that there would be a substantial drop in cases by banning this, right? In New York, in New York, where they've banned indoor dining, their own study showed that only 1.4% of cases could be traced back to indoor dining. The vast majority of cases, it turns out, were spread from private homes. That's where people are getting it. So in your own home, you go to a friend's home, etc.
80%, right? 80%?
60 to 80. I can't remember the exact number, but yeah. Now, the irony is that when you ban dining, like they did in Pennsylvania, New York, California, other places, those are places that there was actually accountability to be held based on other things they could be doing, such as wiping down tables, servers wearing masks, things like that. Those are things that can't be forced inside of homes, or even if they tried to enforce them, it would be impossible to enforce. So what you've effectively done is driven people from an area where they are moderately safe from not contracting the virus into the very areas where they are most likely to get the virus. The irony is the left knows all about this argument because it's one of the single arguments they make for legalization of abortion. They say, oh, if you outlaw abortion, people will just get back alley abortions. Well, guess what? If you outlaw dining in person or outdoors, what you've done is people are going to congregate. They're going to. So they'll just do it underground. That's what's going to happen. You can't change human nature. Now, we all know that. So yesterday, I'm finally over COVID. I'm out of my quarantine. So me and my wife decided to go with her family to go to a place a county called Bartlett, where they have a big Christmas light display. And so we went, and because it's kind of a drive for us, and we knew we would be waiting a long time in line, we decided we were going to get something to eat. Now, there are no options.
This is a yearly thing in Butler, right?
Yes.
The light show, whatever it is?
Yep. So there's no indoor dining options. So we're in a car. So you drive by and you see most of the places that are indoor dining, or a disproportionate amount of them, are not chain restaurants. So like local diners, local pizzerias, like
Mom
places like that. Those are the places, the Burger Kings, the Taco Bells, the McDonald's, they have a built-in drive-thru. The mom and pop shops don't have that, right? So you drive by all these restaurants, some of them chains like Red Lobster, but many of them local diners, pizzerias, and they're all just barren. No one's there. But every McDonald's, Taco Bell, Long John Silver's, there are cars lined out to the road because it's Friday night. Now, you're waiting in these plazas.
During the holiday season.
That's right. So we're waiting, and we decided to go to Long John Silver's, right? So as we waited in line at Long John Silver's, you could see Lowe's and Home Depot and Ollie's and Walmart and Sam's Club all packed. Completely packed. People in there shopping as they please, right? So those places are packed. Now it's the mom and pop shop. They ain't open. They're shut down. They couldn't make a go of it. So we wait. We go through Long John Silver. Now we all have to eat in the car, right? Everybody's eating in the car. The parking lot, there's people in the parking lot that are all just sitting in there with full cars all eating. So instead of properly being able to sit indoor in a place where there's far more air to go around as you're sitting there masticating, chewing with saliva coming out, now you're all shoulder to shoulder next to each other in a car. A parking lot filled with people doing this. Now, what's the rationale for why this is somehow more acceptable? It makes no
given
sense.
the numbers of how you get infected, right?
That's right. It makes no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. And we know this. We know that it doesn't make sense. And the problem is people, because they want, why was I yelling at people that are socialist or let's just say complaining about capitalism in the chat? Here's why. Once you adapt an idea, well, I admit that there are things, like I'm for some social programs. I understand we have a mixed economy. We're not a purely capitalist economy, right? But I'm not the one who's just pointing out and saying, capitalism's the problem. Here's the problem. When you make this all about ideology, it allows you to make all sorts of heinous arguments that end up having all these blind spots that cause so much more pain than what you're trying to solve. So, for example, what happens with Dr. Fauci and the people that just want to say, but socialism or, but I hate capitalism? What happens is they look at this purely through what can we do to prevent the spread of the disease? And that's all that we care about. They don't look at the economic fallout and the other things that come as a result of this. Right? So let me tell you what that mentality leads to. Well, it leads to the governor of Pennsylvania doing things like this. Oh, we're worried that the hospitals will be overwhelmed. Therefore, we have to make the elderly people expendable and send them back to the nursing homes. We can't keep elderly people in the hospital facility where they should be, isolated in a hospital where they could receive the best care. After all, they're the people most at risk to die from COVID. But we can't do that. Instead, we'll send them back to the nursing homes where they'll infect a bunch of other elderly people that we also don't have room for in the hospital beds. Now, the truth of the matter is, we never did see ICU beds reach their limit. Didn't happen. Remember that big ship we sent to New York City? Remember, because the New York City hospital beds were going to be overflowed? Only they never used that ship, or it was minimally used.
They didn't have 200 patients. They had 200 people go on board the ship. Not patients. They went on board the ship. I wonder how many of those people went on board the ship just to see what it looks like.
Right.
Hey, let's take a day trip to see what it looks like. We'll say we're not feeling good.
Right. So that's what happened. So literally, because of the ideology and because of the fear mongering, tens of thousands of people died. Tens of thousands of people were put into nursing homes with COVID, which predictably, now when they used to keep these numbers in places like New York, at the time that they stopped counting, over 60% of the deaths in New York State were from long-term care facilities. In other words, the majority of people that died were in nursing homes. And yet the governor of New York made the decision to force nursing homes to take COVID patients, which predictably caused all these deaths. Now, all of that was done in the name of ideology, because we couldn't question it or we wanted grandma to die. So we had to kill grandma or else grandma would die. That's the argument that Tom Wolf and that Governor Cuomo and all these people made. But it's not just that. It's the exact same thing that we saw with increased deaths with children from the lockdowns as a result of schooling, right? So more kids died because of that. Let me give you another story. In my little area of the world in central Pennsylvania, or western central Pennsylvania, my brother had horrible epilepsy. He was scheduled to have brain surgery. That's how bad it was. When he'd have these seizures, they would occur over and over for hours, right? At one point, or when was this, April maybe? His brain surgery was canceled because of COVID. At the same point, the local Highmark health facilities around here had laid off over 600 healthcare professionals. Why? Because the hospitals were barren. Because there were no cases of COVID, and all of the elective and other stuff that hospitals normally do to make money was canceled because of this ideology of, we have to keep them empty. We can't allow old people here, send them back to the nursing homes with COVID. We can't allow people with epilepsy here because they were worried about this hypothetical COVID rush that would come. So inevitably what happened was my brother had a seizure. My mom takes him to Jefferson County Hospital. At that point, Jefferson County had, are you ready for this? Zero cases of COVID. My brother gets in there. My mom has to wait outside, even though he's having a seizure, because they don't want to spread COVID. They don't want people in there that aren't necessary. She's shocked to see that my brother comes out the doors 40 minutes later. She goes in and says, why are you discharging him? Well, because they said because we have to make sure that the hospital beds are empty. And my mom said, he always has these seizures over and over. They last for hours. Well, he's discharged. And so, in the 20 minutes it took to leave the hospital to my parents' place, my brother had another seizure in the car where he started to choke himself in with the seatbelt. So as my mom opened the door, he flopped out of the car door and shattered his collarbone. All of that done in the name of ideology. Now, that's just medical issues. We haven't even got to the dangers that come as a result of economic crisis. We now have over 60% of small businesses in this country that have shut down over COVID are being predicted as never opening again.
Globally.
Over 50% of black-owned businesses that shut down will never open again. But you care about black people, right? What are you going to do? What do you think predictably happens to people's health as they are being crushed economically? What do you think's going to happen? Well, we could already start to see it. We see things like deaths from Alzheimer's are increasing because people with dementia and Alzheimer's are unable to visit family, which is basically the best thing you could do for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. So we see the deaths from that rising. We see deaths from like young people that aren't getting proper vaccinations now because of the fear to go to the hospital. In the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to see that those spike. We see deaths from substance abuse and suicide, particularly with younger people, are spiking right now. We have places like the World Health Organization is saying that over 100 million extra people next year will face starvation because of the lack of economic productivity and farming that has occurred because of these lockdowns. 100 million people. Is that enough dead for you? If they all starve, is that going to be enough for you? What do you think happens? The people that are saying...
No. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I just... Let me... 100 million people, they estimate, have died already.
I don't know.
100 million. That's the figure that I saw last month because I was reading about that story, and the WHO, some world organization.
It might have been WTO, but
right, was saying that it was going to be about 100 million by the end of this year. Maybe that's what it was. It's still one is too many.
And look, and here's the thing, though. Here's the point. So you're sitting there listening, and people are like, well, what would we do? Me and Carlos were open with what we would have done. Protect the most vulnerable people and using all of our government resources possible and allow people that have a 99.9 blah, blah, blah chance of surviving this to go to work as usual, to continue their life as usual. Instead, we used resources to punish and lock down the healthy population and then intentionally spread COVID to the vulnerable population. That's what we did. And the people that, if you disagree with that, people say, oh, you wanted grandma to die? No, we didn't want grandma to die. That's why we were against this crazy cockamamie strategy of sending COVID patients into nursing homes while locking down healthy people. Now, our economy is suffering even greater. So we have less resources to spend. We literally have hospitals laying health professionals off in the middle of a pandemic.
Well,
it gets worse than that, though. It gets worse than that. It's Jimmy Dore was saying the other day, as I was telling you this, Carlos. So then what do they decide to do? They're going to pass a $1.7 trillion package sponsored by Republicans and Democrats. Both sides did this. I said at the time it was a huge mistake. Why? Because the majority of that money would not go into the hands of actual people that were suffering from the virus or from the lockdowns. Instead, it would go to enrich people. And we've seen that it's led over this year, we've seen one of the largest wealth transfers from the poor people to the richer people in the history of this country. All brought to you by Grassley and the Republicans, Lindsey Graham, in conjunction with AOC and Bernie Sanders.
And de Blasio.
Both sides did this. Both sides did this. They used this excuse to say, just give us money. Leave us print the money. Give us trillions of dollars. We'll make sure it gets in the hands of the people. And now, what do we see now? They're talking, this whole time, they sent one stimulus check to people, so they collapse your economy. And again, as we said last night, Carlos, the difference is this. We're not big welfare people. I understand the need for a social safety net. I understand everyone in life has a point where they probably need some sort of help, and our government should be there to provide it within reason, right? I get that. But the difference that we're talking about here is, through no fault of people's own fault, they have intentionally collapsed their ability to pay rent. You can't go to work. I decide not to go to work. You literally couldn't go to work. They collapsed the economy intentionally in the name of fighting a virus. And now they still haven't sent out another check to people. Still, we had Nancy Pelosi admitted, we couldn't just send checks to people. We couldn't do that because the election. As soon as the election was over, she said, now we can send checks to people. We have Republicans like Senator Ron Johnson saying the deficit's too high to send checks to people. Well, I'm sorry, it's a little late for that when you're talking about spending trillions of dollars that you know will end up in the hands of large corporations. You didn't talk about the deficit when you were signing off on that.
And in the middle of all of this, we had this happen yesterday. Harold Schmidt, an expert in ethics and health policy at the University of Pennsylvania, said that it is reasonable to put essential workers ahead of older adults, given their risks, and that they are disproportionately minorities. Older populations are whiter, Dr. Schmidt said. Society is structured in a way that enables them to live longer. Instead of giving additional health benefits to those who already had more of them, we can start to level the playing field a bit. My question to you, Robert, is it too cynical to say that these governors sent people into nursing homes to kill white people?
Well, I mean, to me, it's not just, it's a question that could be asked. To me, the reason that they sent people to nursing homes, there's two possibilities. One was incredible incompetence, which is no better. Or the second is because they wanted deaths because their entire plan, it's a two-part plan. One was to blame Donald Trump for the hell that was going on in this country. So the harder they could make that hell, the better for them. So it wouldn't be enough if we didn't have tens of thousands of people dying in nursing homes. They had to ensure that that happened, right? That was the plan.
So they could also then revenue off of it afterwards.
Right. So, and the other part of the plan, and that's kind of what you're getting to here, is that you've heard them talk about, quote, the Great Reset. So the problem is, because of the neo-libs and neocons that have been running the world for so long, they've basically been bankrupting the world, is what they've been doing. They've encouraged deficit spending. They've encouraged this sort of transfer of wealth that we've seen that's been occurring. Not transfer of wealth like tax cuts. That's not what we're talking about. Tax cuts is seeking to benefit people that are productive that otherwise would have to pay taxes exorbitantly. You can agree or disagree with tax cuts, but we're not talking about, Carlos, can you take this screen share up? We're not talking about that. We're talking about intentionally creating rules that allow the wealthiest people like Jeff Bezos, people like George Soros, people like Bill Gates, to influence and lobby governments so that they could get their way and get loopholes for the very things that they're advocating small business people and poor people have to pay. The difference between people, and we can have this discussion, people that want big government to solve this versus people like me are this. I see a problem with lobbying, and I see a problem with these massive businesses influencing our government to get out of paying their fair share. And my solution is we need to take away the ability for the government to pick winners and losers. Whereas the other people say, no. The problem is that there are people lobbying the government, all these corporations, to get this transfer of wealth. And so we'll make the government even bigger. As if that will somehow, and I think that that's ridiculous, because the argument that all of a sudden if we just give the government more power, then they'll stop advocating for the wealthiest people in the world. It's just nonsense. And so what this was about, this Great Reset, we could see that Nancy, just look at the Democrats' bill that they were pushing. What was it about?
Right.
Well, the states that they've mismanaged that are going into growing debt, they wanted money to be sent to those states.
Right. The post office.
Right. And all of these places. That's what this is. And worldwide, this is what's going on. They need an excuse. People weren't going to accept over and over and over again how these governments and the people that are involved in these governments are picking winners and losers, getting personally incredibly wealthy themselves, and especially with countries like China. So we've elected Joe China Biden. Apparently he's going to be in office. He can't even call China an adversary. We've been selling out the wealth of this country off the back of the working class of this country. White, black, man, woman, gay, straight, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, any of them. I don't care about those categories. We've been selling those people out for 50 years so that China and a bunch of politicians in this country could get rich. That's what this is about. And so they've decided, another crisis? Just like it didn't have to be COVID. It could be any crisis. That's what they do. And it's not just me saying this. Go look at Jimmy Dore, leftist, hates Donald Trump. Look at what he talked about. He understood that original CARES Act stimulus was going to go into the hands of the wealthy. He knew it. Who was it signed off on by? Bernie Sanders, AOC, they voted for it, as did all the Republicans, and Donald Trump signed off on it. They're all to blame. Every single one of them. But the idea that, now if I'm against the lockdowns, the mechanism that they were used in order to be able to steal this wealth was the damn lockdowns. Now show me any proof that the lockdowns have helped us. They certainly haven't helped us economically. Have they stopped people from dying of COVID? Well, the states that have locked down more, like New York, they have higher per capita COVID deaths than states like Florida that refuse to do the lockdowns as harshly.
Did you see the chart on Twitter with respect to the breakdown between North Dakota and South Dakota?
Right, I did see it. Right,
did you see it?
And it's basically even. It's close to even, right?
Yeah. So real quick, here it is. A doctor named Matt Strauss said that North Dakota resisted business restrictions and mask mandates until November 13th, when the governor succumbed to political pressure and instituted both. Cases fell right after. Clear evidence that the policies worked, right? Wrong. South Dakota instituted neither, an almost identical pandemic curve. So South Dakota is in red here, and North Dakota is in blue. And South Dakota had the same spike and the same drop off, but less, with no restrictions. They don't know what they're talking about.
No, and again, so
right. I mean,
so let's talk.
What a perfect. I mean, could you have a better scenario than North Dakota and South Dakota, geographically contained, right? Interstate traffic, interstate commerce, and they both say the same thing. And one was locked down and one wasn't.
Well, right. And look, here's the difference. And here's what people need to understand. It's the same way with Sweden. It's the same way with Florida. It's the same with South Dakota, right? We weren't told.
Taiwan.
Right. This wasn't the argument. The argument wasn't this. Well, if we don't do a lockdown, things will be slightly worse. That's not what we were told. What were we told at the beginning of this? Either we lock down and have 50,000 dead, or we don't and have 2.2 million. Either the UK locks down and has 10,000 dead, or they don't and they have 500,000. They said that places that didn't lock down would be a hellscape. It would be apocalyptic. That's how important the lockdowns are. Understand this. The burden should be on the people advocating for the taking away of your rights and the intentional collapsing of your economy, because we know that that leads to hellacious results. We know that. And so I said all along, I could be persuaded that possibly a short-term lockdown would be acceptable if they could be transparent and prove that it somehow would be outweighing the pain that would come as a result of the economic collapse and the taking away of our rights through an intentional lockdown. And what I was told by person after person that endorses the lockdowns, none of them have any science that prove that the lockdowns were acceptable. None. They just say, look how many people are dying, therefore lockdown. Well, where's the evidence that the lockdown is necessary or helping prevent people from dying? Again, the lockdown first mentality is exactly what led to putting COVID patients in nursing homes. Yet not one person that said lockdown or you want to kill grandma, not one of them will say, geez, my bad. Damn, that was a huge mistake. Not one of them will say it. They sit there and act like they're still the party of science. And they told us if we didn't lock down, we would have these apocalyptic scenarios. So when you look at South Dakota, when you look at Florida, when you look at Sweden, they go, oh, but if you look at these numbers here, you can see that there's slightly 1% more cases or 1% more deaths. You look at Sweden compared to its neighbors. And you didn't say it would be slightly worse than its neighbors. You said it would be a hellscape. In fact, the Imperial College model, when that data was put in by, I forget the university, but back in April, when they put that data in for Sweden and said if Sweden didn't have lockdowns, they were talking about hundreds of thousands of deaths in Sweden. We're not even at 5% of that. So was the lockdown worth it? If your argument is, no, you have to do everything possible, to hell with the economy, to hell with rights, you have to do everything possible that can prevent even one COVID death, you're not thinking critically. That's stupid. If that was the case, we would have just taken the China model and welded everyone in, literally locked them in their homes. That's what we would have done. Now,
well, no one knows what the China model is. I mean, but because those numbers are totally skewed and no one trusts them. So, yes.
Well, and then it's worth talking about, like, what you just brought up from the University of Penn there. So let me bring this up. I'm going to, instead of bringing up an article that talks about how the CDC is horrible and racist, I'm going to bring up an article defending them. How about that? Let's see. From Mother Jones. Hardly a right-wing, right? Mother Jones. No, the CDC is not deprioritizing vaccine for the elderly because they're too white. The CDC recommendation in question is about who to prioritize first for the vaccine after frontline healthcare workers, essential workers, high-risk adults, or the elderly. The answer is partly based on which strategy would prevent most deaths. But now think about that statement. The answer is partly based on which strategy would prevent most deaths. Do you see? You're starting to see where this article's going and where the CD... Aren't I being told by all of the anti-capitalists in the chat? It's about saving lives. That's what it's about. Oh, but the CDC says it's only partly. It's only partly about saving lives. There's other things that it's about. It turns out that this depends on a lot whether Pfizer and Moderna vaccines merely protect individuals from the coronavirus or if they prevent transmission. We don't know with certainty yet, but the testing so far suggests that they do in fact reduce or prevent transmission. If that's the case, here's the relevant CDC chart. Okay, now here's the chart from the CDC. This is linked from an article defending this. You ready? Now, do you see this green bar there? You can see this, right, Carlos? That's people over the age of 65. That's the elderly population we're talking about. The red is high-risk adults. Notice that it's more. And the blue is essential workers. Initially vaccinating age 65 plus in phase 1B averts approximately 0.5% to 2% more deaths compared to targeting high-risk adults or essential. In other words, definitively the CDC is saying, according to us, if we gave the elderly population second crack at the vaccine, because first crack's obviously doctors, nurses, people that are working in the front line. So we're talking about who gets the vaccine second. According to the CDC, up to 2% more people would be saved if we give it to the elderly. Then Mother Jones continues. As you see, the vaccinations of all three groups produce very similar numbers of averted deaths. There are no error bars, but we're guessing it's fairly large, which justifies the CDC assertion that differences between the three groups are minimal. So then it moves on to ethical considerations. And you can see here where it talks about, it's true, the CDC lists underrepresentation of racial and ethnic minority groups in the 65 plus population as one of the issue amongst dozens. In other words, the CDC, according to an article defending them, is saying, yes, we believe we would save more lives if we gave the elderly population, but part of our consideration is not giving the elderly population is there's too many white people.
Right.
Now, anyone
4,000 of them, as a matter of fact, that we can eliminate by not giving them the vaccine.
It's
ethical considerations.
Someone explained to me that says I'm a conspiracy theorist why we should listen to a CDC that says, actually, when it comes to the vaccine, we are intentionally not choosing the path that we think would save the most lives.
Exactly.
Because of race. Because too many white people could be saved. Now, here's anytime, this is the danger with this left-wing progressive nonsense that you see with identity politics and critical race theory and things like that. We're literally saying, our premier health agency is saying more people have to die so we could feel better about skin color. That's what they're saying. I don't want my doctors.
That's why we have, and that's the answer to the question that you asked before with respect to these people online right now fighting you. I'm not going to give you an explanation. We have a mortal fury against your ideology. Not going to explain it to you. We have a mortal fury against you, and we always will.
Now listen, let's
because
there's two ways. Well, there's two ways to look at this. First off, the first thing is this: if your health experts are factoring in anything other than how can we save the most lives, they should be totally discredited. The fact that race entered their lips proves that they are not qualified for the job. Get the hell out of there, right? Second, now here's the two ways you could look at this. You could look at it and go, wow, the anti-white racism is so bad, they're literally saying as a country, we're okay with 2% more deaths just so we can feel better and virtue signal about race. But let's look at it from the other side for a minute. Let's assume that you're someone who's concerned primarily about Black America, which is fine. Okay? So let's look at this. Let's look at what they've suggested. Now, we're told that COVID has disproportionately affected people of color, right? Were there any movements that were focused around people of color that occurred over the summer? I seem to recall one. It was called Black Lives Matter, and it was George Floyd protest. Now, did the health experts say that we should avoid large gatherings? They did. But somehow, when it came to large gatherings focused on race, they were okay with it. And now we see that black people are disproportionately affected by COVID. Remember then we saw places in Oregon where we saw towns that said black people don't have to wear masks? Remember that? That was in their law? More health experts saying black people don't have to follow the scientific orders designed to keep us safe from COVID. And then predictably, more black people disproportionately got COVID. Now they're saying, hey, here's a vaccine. Now this vaccine they told us 3 months ago, many health experts and most of the liberal media in the Democratic Party told us it was impossible. Couldn't get a vaccine this fast. The quickest we've ever had before was the mumps. 4 years it took for the mumps vaccine, right? So this was impossible. It couldn't happen. That's what they told us before the election. Remember? When Trump was saying, we're going to have a vaccine, they said, wishful thinking. It would take a miracle. Now they're saying it's here. And we should give it to minority groups first. Does anybody remember the Tuskegee experiments? Where we decided we were going to test on black people for medical advances? Now, forgive me if I was someone concerned with black America, I'd say, so let me get this straight. You have all these rules for social distancing and mask wearing that's designed to keep us safe from COVID. Yet you continually tell groups focused on black Americans, oh, you don't have to follow those rules. Now we see that black Americans are disproportionately affected by COVID. And then you said, oh, this vaccine. In fact, we actually had Democrats straight out say, I wouldn't trust this vaccine, said Cuomo, said Kamala Harris. And so who's the people you want to take it first? Black people. Give it to the black people. Let them be the guinea pigs.
Yeah, but we don't need to test it on them because the vaccine is foolproof. We can just give it to them. See the difference?
No,
and you know who's responsible for that? Joe Biden. Joe Biden is responsible for the fact that we have a vaccine. Is that not correct?
Right. Now I hear so, and just
is
so you know
why he has a 60% approval rating as a what is it? President-elect.
Right. It's garbage. By the way, I don't even talk about
trash.
You remember when Trump supporters were telling me and I was complaining about this. Well, at least we showed the pollsters wrong. Pollsters after this election, they've finally been devastating. I said it won't be a month before we're back to citing polls. And so now I hear, why are we even, I'm not even going to talk about the polls. I don't believe them. They're garbage. But
yeah. And most of these polls are run by companies and owned by companies that are leftists. Okay. And, we hate those people. We hate those people. They're destroying our country. And, all we do is talk about the fact that they're never right. They're always wrong. And they want to kill white people. And they want to enslave the middle class. And they want to destroy the identity of this country. And if we don't stand up to these people and fight them at every single, on every street, like Churchill said, at every point, we shall fight. There were people standing on the beaches in England with, and this is a true story that came from the nephew or the grandson of a man who stood on that shore with a mop handle and a garbage can lid, ready to defend their country. They had no weapons in England. A mop handle and a garbage can lid. In those days, they were made out of metal. We don't fight them now when they're lying about everything, which takes me back to your first question. It's now. Well, before we get to that, did you notice the citation this week, Rob, that there's enough evidence now to suggest that the FBI lied about the fact that anti-Trump investigations, Crossfire Hurricane, didn't start on January 31st.
July 31st, 2016. Yep.
It started before that.
Yeah, I set this up. I knew this when I argued with people.
Yeah, we both did, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
I argued with all these people on the left that was totally cool with the coup against Trump. And I said, fair, they're not going to agree with me. So I got little concessions. I said, so fair enough. So you're admitting that this investigation started on July 1st, 2016 as a result of George Papadopoulos telling Alexander Downer while he was drunk, he heard that there were emails that Russia had. Yep, that's when it started. Now we know that's not the case, that there were several investigations into Trump's team concerning Russia before that. They lied. And the people on the left that were okay with the coup, once more, just like every other time, they'll be perfectly fine with it now. It doesn't matter. They could come out, the FBI could come out and say, we don't like Donald Trump's hair, so we spied on him. We think that he's Nazi, so that's why we did it. And they'd be like, yeah, great. And that's what I find to be the funniest thing about the hypocrisy that I see overwhelmingly for the left. I understand it can occur on the right as well, but it's overwhelmingly from the left. They claim to be against authoritarianism. Can you think of something more authoritarian than unelected bureaucrats in the FBI and the CIA tipping the scales of who could win an election? I can't. That's about as authoritarian as it gets, yet they're perfectly fine for it. They're for the working class people, but they advocate for lockdowns that made Amazon rich, Walmart rich, Bill Gates rich. Right? But they're for the people. That's what they'll tell you. They're for that. Like one of my favorite, I know this is getting a little off track, but Carlos, you're a racist if you have a problem with predominantly white people that live in the suburbs going into inner city black neighborhoods and starting fires and looting stores there. You're a racist. You get that? If you're against white people going into black neighborhoods and damaging those black neighborhoods, then you're a racist. You don't like black people. Do you see? Do you see how that works? If you're not for our country leaving troops all around the world and invading places, then you're a xenophobe. You get it? If you're not against, or if you're not for lockdowns that enrich corporations, then you don't care about the working class people. Do you see? If you're not for the FBI spying on the president of the United States, lying about it over and over, then you're an authoritarian. Do you see how this works?
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much more to say. There was a coup against Trump, period. If Trump, and you know this, Carlos, I'm not going to mention any names, but you know how I talk to people on the left all the time? And I said, look, you're making a huge mistake either being silent or pretending the violence on the left doesn't exist, or claiming that it's okay. Why? Because inevitably, the same tactics will be used against you, whether it's from those people on the left or people on the right that say, we're going to engage in this. And we're starting to see it in real time. Oh my God, the same people that were for pulling down statues, now they're demanding an FBI investigation into a hate crime because some Proud Boys tore up a Black Lives Matter sign. How dare they? They're not even from the area. And they came into the area and, well, where were you when Black Lives Matter did that 220-something cities? Where were you? Most of them weren't from the area. They were going in. They were destroying property. They were destroying statues. You were okay with it. And I said, as soon as those tactics are used against them, they'll cry and say, this isn't fair. You can't do that. Well, it's the same. I've said the exact same thing about the weaponization of the FBI. So, although I'm against this, what's to stop Donald Trump right now from just being like, screw it. I'm going to use the FBI to spy on Biden's transition team. I'm going to leak stuff to the press that I feel like that makes them look bad. I'm going to start an FBI investigation. We're going to raid Biden's lawyers in the middle of the night, drag them out in their underwear. What's to stop it? What could reasonably any person on the left that was okay with the FBI's treatment of Trump, what moral ground do they have to stand on to say that that would be unacceptable?
None. And you know, ethically, I read something this week that was perfect. People that are more compassionate than you don't have more morality than you. Get that out of your head. Just because they're saying they're compassionate doesn't mean that they're more moral than you. The fight in the end, I think, comes down to this. The left is basically have proven to be afraid of words haven't they? That's their weakness. My question to you, Rob, is if we get stronger at knowing what they mean and knowing which ones and how to use them, which words would those words be to use against them? They're terrified of words.
Well, here's the thing. Right.
Gender. Terrified. They don't want us to know what gender is. That's why there's 160 of them. Is that correct? Do I have that right? I want to make sure that I'm starting off at a point where everyone can agree, where we can agree. Not the starting point that I want to start off of. Like, for example, locally, where Jennifer Lake wants to start the conversation by saying that we're all racists. That's where she wants to start the conversation. We can agree that they're afraid of words. That's the starting point. Which are the words that we need to get better and stronger at knowing more than they do to be able to vanquish them?
Well,
in your opinion.
So here's the thing. It's not just that they're afraid of words. I mean, there's certainly a lot of truth to it.
It makes sense, though, my point.
Right.
I mean,
and there's things that we could do rhetorically to point out, like, the best thing you could do is to prove how they are hypocrites. Not all of them, not everyone on the left, but the people that are controlling that party and many of the most vocal people, how they are hypocrites, and how everything that they accuse you of is exactly what they are. They're the racists. The reason they look at everything in context of race. Here's the dirty little secret. You want to know what a large portion, not all of them, but a large portion of white Black Lives Matter people really think? Oh, those poor black people. They're precious. They're precious little babies. We'll take care of them. We know better than them. We'll go into their neighborhoods and light fires. That's what we'll do.
It reminds me of a tweet. I'm going to put it up here.
Right. That's who they are. That's what they are. And what we need to understand is, if the left needs to understand that people like me and you that are against political violence and we're actually for fairness and dialogue and things like that. Go ahead. It says, guess who isn't on Twitter? Working class immigrants and poor who are being harmed by these horrific lockdowns. Guess who is on Twitter? Unscathed elite ruling class politicians, bureaucrats, media, and academics demanding more and more horrific lockdowns and restrictions.
Because they know better than us.
Right. That's exactly the truth. Right? That's exactly what's going on. The reality is we are actually interested in a system where everyone's ideas, even ideas we think are terrible, are brought to the table. That's what we want. That's why we've been so vehemently against political violence. That's why I've been against censorship, even for people that disagree with me. In every instance, that's what I've tried to do. But I've been mocked and ridiculed and whatever. That's fine. I don't. The point is this.
The extent of your point, though, is once you and you do this all the time. Once you've proven that they're hypocrites and you've made that case, what's the next step after that? Because they've proven to be immune to hypocrisy. They've proven to be immune to charges of censorship. They don't care that they censored the information about COVID and the information about the truth of so many different things, but specifically with Hunter Biden's relationship with China and relationship with the Ukraine and the involvement of Joe Biden. They completely hid that. That was regime change type stuff. What needs to follow after that, after you've already classified them as hypocrites and as people who censor and that people who are basically un-American? There's got to be one or two other chess moves after that, right?
The point is you're not directing it at them. The truth is that the people that want the communist and the people that are communist light, what they're in effect saying is this. Look, I believe that at the heart of the matter, it's this, that you could be a collectivist or an individualist and be a good person. But many collectivists have now shirked individual responsibility and liberty, two of the things that I think are the most important to this country. And that's why they can engage in the hypocrisy. It doesn't matter that they suggest...
Is it hypocrisy or denial? In your thought?
Well,
it
it's...
depends, right? It depends.
Right. I think they know they're hypocrites deep down. They know, but they don't care. So they'll say things like, yes, of course, Bernie Sanders has 3 houses and has a bigger carbon footprint than the average American will have in 10 years. That's fine, though, because he advocates for collectivism to lower a carbon footprint. And so they think that it's okay for them. It's okay for them to use violence to solve what they think would be violence down the road. It's okay for them to use censorship to get out ideas if they think that the end result of that's good. They could justify any immoral or criminal action on their own behalf. That's why they could say that you should be fined or go to jail for violating certain social distance orders, but they should be celebrated when they go out for Black Lives Matter rallies and violate social distance orders. It's why they think they could burn down any statue or anything that they dislike, but if you tear a Black Lives Matter sign up, then the police should get involved and that should be considered a hate crime. They don't care, right? The audience isn't them, though. That's not what we're trying to convince. The truth of the matter is that the vast majority of people in this world and in this country in particular, they haven't really picked a side. And most of it's because most people just want to be left alone. They're not interested in politics. They don't think it's fun. It's not something that they just want to go to work. They want to provide for their family. They want to do what they consider fun and hobbies in their free time. That's what they want. Those are the people you need to convince. The people that control the narrative, because the left controls the narrative and the establishment controls the narrative. The ones that are telling you, oh, you're immoral if you don't believe X. If you don't support Black Lives Matter, you're a racist. If you don't support the lockdowns, you want grandma to die. Those people are lying hypocrites. That's why you call out those lying hypocrites. Not because you think that the hypocrite's going to go, yeah, I am a hypocrite. Boy, that's terrible. They don't care.
Right.
And the worst part, like, they are lying hypocrites too. Again, not everyone on the left, but the majority of them. They know, the majority of them on the left know that they celebrated tearing down statues and rioting and looting when the left was doing it, and then had a conniption when it looked like the Proud Boys destroyed a Black Lives Matter sign. They know that. They know that they said Russia, Russia, Russia anytime they wanted, but if you talk about the bigger enemy by any logical standard, which is China, they call you a xenophobe. They know that. They know they're hypocrites. They don't care. They know they didn't give a crap about kids in cages when it was ordered under the Obama administration, but now they feign outrage when it's Trump. They don't care about those kids. They don't care about the working class. All they want is more power for themselves. That's it. That's who these people are. And so pointing out their hypocrisy to themselves, it isn't going to change that. They're immoral people. They don't care. They are operating under the assumption that they're better than everyone that disagrees with them, so it's okay for them to not hold themselves to the standards that they want to hold everyone else to. They want total power. They want to be all the things they accuse Trump of doing. They want to be authoritarians. They want to tell you when you could open your business, who you could go visit, what sort of paperwork you need to have to prove that you have a vaccine, who should be allowed to speak on social media. That's what they want. They are the dictators that they claim Trump is. That's who these people are. And so you're not going to convince them all of a sudden, oh, you're actually a horrible person. You're not going to convince them. So instead what you do is you point out the hypocrisy of the people that are our elites, that are our ethical and intellectual superior, and how horrible they are. That way the average person who might lean left, he might lean right, so they could see the truth of it. Because the truth is this, the average person was willing to accept the sacrifices under COVID. They said, yes, I'll wear a mask. I won't go to work. I'll stay home. I'll do it. 15 days to stop.
Much of what's happening now is fear.
Right.
Of those
15 days to stop the spread. Remember that? I remember that. Oh, yeah, we got to flatten the curve. People were willing to accept that. What they weren't willing to...
You want to go to your buddy Kirkin? Slow the spread.
Right.
Flatten the curve. Crush the curve. Lockdown until vaccine. Vaccines change everything.
Right. And then they don't. And that's the goalposts will always move with these people. Always. Right. Now, am I saying there aren't bad people on the right? Of course not. In fact, that was part of my argument. The strategy, and that's why I said they should have been trying to engage in a dialogue with people like us. Because what's going to happen is, and it's the same with Trump. They said Trump was Hitler, Trump was a Nazi. Here's the truth. If voices like ours start to become irrelevant, then you're really going to see that strong man come up on the right. I don't want to see that either. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see
There are worse things than Trump.
Look, and I told you, one of the big things in my personal life that I had personal people reach out to me and say that they were scared that I became a radical was when I said that Trump should have deployed the National Guard at the beginning of these George Floyd riots in places like Minneapolis and places like New York City, where it was getting out of control, where they were burning police precincts.
Seattle and Portland.
Right. I said that should have been deployed. Now, I made it quite clear. I did hours worth of videos on this. I don't want to see that. As someone who's civil liberty minded, I don't want to see the National Guard in the streets or the Marines. I don't want to see it. However, if the real solution would have been these Democratic elected mayors allowing their police to do their job and crack down on these domestic terrorists. That's what they were. They're using violence and intimidation and property destruction to achieve a political goal. So the solution would have been for the elected leaders to take care of the problem. They chose not to. As was admitted by people I debated on the left that said, of course, because it makes Trump look bad. So they're more than happy to allow the riots to occur. That's how much they care about the inner city. They're willing to watch it burn if it means that they could point to Donald Trump and say it's his fault. They would rather the cities burn. That's what they wanted.
And I've made that point before. I've made that point. And I want to move on to...
Well, just real quick, I just want to say, so the point was, I didn't want troops on the street. I just thought it was the less evil of all the options we had, right? That was the point. It was better. And I said... to all of those out there, to my friends that I personally talked to that said, oh my God, I can't believe you want troops on the street. I said, the only other solution is pogroms. It's that enough people on the other side will say, you know what, we've had enough. Grab your gun. Kyle Rittenhouse is the solution that you're asking for. That's what's going to happen. We're going to start to see people say, I'm tired of being pushed around. I'm tired of paying taxes to a government that's just going to allow mobs to come in. I'm tired of paying taxes to a government that says I can't go to Thanksgiving dinner, but my elected leaders are still collecting a salary and they're going to dinner wherever they want. I'm tired of it. And people are going to start to take matters into their... Right. They're going to take matters into their own hand. You want to dox people on the right? You want to go to their house and threaten you? That's what they're going to do to you. And if you're on the left and you've been okay with, I'll still be against it. I'll still argue against that. But if you're on the left and you cheered on or were silent or downplayed this, don't be surprised when it comes for you. Don't sit there and claim to be the victim. You asked for this war. You asked for it. And so, when it's arbitrarily used against you, when the next Republican leader comes in that has a position of power and says, all people on the left must lock down, but the Tea Party could go, they can go have rallies, that's fine. Now, if Black Lives Matter wants to protest, the police will come down on them, but the Tea Party's fine. Let's go ahead.
And this is how it's going to be sparked. You ready? They're going to come for somebody. They're going to come for somebody, and that somebody is going to defend themselves. And they're going to do something horrible. And someone's going to put a mic or a camera in front of them as they're being taken away. And they say the following: they came for me, so I shot them.
Look, and Carlos, let me tell you the intellectual capacity.
That little video will inspire hundreds and hundreds and tens of thousands of people to defend themselves for when they come for them. And the reason why I'm saying this is not because I want to scare people, but I do want to talk about something before.
Well,
10:49
just real quick, let me just tell you the intellectual capacity of some of those on the left that are watching. I'm making veiled threats of war. Is that what I did? Did I say that's what I want? No, I said that's why people like me are an important voice to stop it from getting there. But that's how stupid these people are. They think that wait a minute, we should be allowed to push for our side to use violence and hypocritical. This is how stupid these people are. It's absolute stupidity. No, I'm not calling for war. I'm telling you that's what you're pushing for. You can't think I'm going to celebrate my side using violence, intimidation, using our platforms to censor people, using our governors to shut down people from going to businesses that we politically disagree with, and expect that there won't be a retaliation. Yet the constant victim mentality of these people on the left says, well, wait a minute, we did all of that. But then when the other side when the other side just warns, there's going to be a pushback. It's them calling for war. That's how stupid
Why-
and hypocritical these people are.
Why are these people so weak? Why can't you do anything? Why can't you stand on your own 2 feet? You're not allowed to come into our comments on this thread if you can't read. Moving on. A friend of the show had something absolutely horrible happen to them this week. Can you talk about the censorship and the situation that happened to our friend and his account, and then roll into Sarah Corhier's video example of what happened to the chairman or the president of Gab and his family with MasterCard and Visa.
Right. So I'm not going to use the person's name. I'll just say a friend of the show, someone that's been on the show, text me and said that their PayPal account has been disbanded. No explanation given, just that the content that they were providing was not in line with PayPal.
Right. No reasons, right?
Right. No reasons really given.
No instance of violations. No,
and
nothing.
this isn't a person. This is a person who does talk about a lot of the same things we do, but I would say in a less aggressive tone than us. In fact, specializes in prayer groups and things like that. So that's the person that now they're bigger than me. So that's probably why they were able to be seen. But yeah, their PayPal was canceled. And Sarah has done excellent videos of another friend of the show, Sarah Corrier, who's done excellent videos on people that were in the Proud Boys and people that the person who ran Gab, about how their PayPal accounts were disbanded and then their individual banks contacted them to say, you can no longer bank with us. They basically deplatformed. They did this to Alex Jones as well. It's not enough to just say, we won't let you on Twitter or we won't let you on YouTube. We also won't allow you to engage in common banking practices because we think that your message, and this is how it starts.
They'll go like your message.
Right. They'll go after people like our friend. They'll go after us eventually. They don't like your message. It will come for those on the left as well. Eventually, once they get all the right boogeymen, maybe you're not left enough. You know, well, you didn't like the fact that Joe Biden's neocon, neolib administration decided to bomb another country? Well, maybe we'll come for you, too. You shut your mouth. We won't allow you to. And this is depersoning people. We talked about
Glenn Greenwald is a perfect example of that in The Intercept, correct?
Right.
I mean, his own his own media company, he had to leave the company that he founded, The Intercept, because he wasn't left enough. Okay, Matt Taibbi and there's a whole host of other people that we follow that are on the left that are honest people.
Right. Well, that's why it's important to say we're not saying everyone on the left. When I talk about the left, I'm talking about people that run the establishment Democratic Party and all of these institutions and the sycophants that cheer them on.
Right. So why is it bad? Why is it bad when banks become political, in your opinion?
Well,
I mean, for me, the reason why banks being political is an issue is because then what stops them? What stops them, Rob, from them doxing your purchases? I'll give you an example. Let's say that Todd Bartlett is using sexual aids and they dox him. That's a funny example, but you know what I mean, right? This is where we're going. With banks getting political, Visa and MasterCard and PayPal, and this is sort of what Sarah was talking about in her video of a cashless society. If they can get you off of cash and they can get you only on bank only and digital, then they can dox you off of that. Then there's no way that you can make a living or pay for anything.
Right.
That's ultimately the globalist, right, ideology.
Look, it's
a
not
major
just
concern.
It's not just with banking, right? Like, think of it this way. If you go back and you look at like times of great dissent amongst governments, whether it be the American Revolution, other times that we've seen, where were the seeds of that dissent grown? Well, it was in our pubs. It was in our restaurants, right? It was in the social platforms of the day, right? Okay, so now they've effectively banned those. We have to be locked down. You can't do that, right? So now, where are the conversations taking place? Social media. Awesome. And so what happens? The people that now control basically the overwhelming spots where these conversations are taking place control the government. They control. That's what happens. That's why I've said over and over, they won't have to steal one ballot in the future.
Right.
If they as the tech companies' power grows, they'll be able to control the plurality of people and what they think by controlling the messages that are acceptable. Banking's the same way. In that instance, we're talking about speech. Now we're talking about your ability to function and pay for goods and services. So they've rearranged society where we're in a cashless society, basically, and to where now you have to go through one of these banks. If all the banks say, you toe the party line or you're no longer allowed to use our service, what will you do? How will you have a business? How will you get paid? You going to go cash only? Good luck. And by the way, the left will say that. This is another thing. So you'll see people on the left say, well, hey, they're private businesses. Do what you want. The same people that will say things to you like, the internet's a right. People need the internet to successfully function with the business. So they don't care if the services on that internet overwhelmingly censor you if you're conservative. They don't care if banks censor you and kick you off their platforms. They're fine with that. But they'll sit there and tell you, oh, the internet's a right. Or, PlayStation 5s are a right or something. If you saw the debate I did the other night. That's where these people are coming from. So, it's just another danger. And look, I tell people, most of the people watching us right now are watching on YouTube. Stop. Go to Twitch. Go to DLive. Twitch isn't much better. Go to DLive. We're going to be on other platforms here soon. If you're on YouTube, you will wake up someday and Carlos and I will not be here. That simple.
We'll not be here.
And then it'll be you someday. It's just the way it is. And if you keep using the service, they're going to keep screwing you over. And I know it's like a drug. It's hard to get off, but,
But it's funny that you said that because I posted something on the Lycoming County Republican page this week. It posited the same idea with respect to censorship. Did you ever see the movie Prince of the City with Treat Williams? It's a story of 4 New York City cops that basically became dirty, but they became dirty centered around a specific idea, and this is what was the idea. The only way to be able to cut into the drug trade, this is in the 80s, the only way to cut into the drug trade is to steal the pushers' money. If you steal their cash, it's hard for them to be able to buy drugs to be able to then turn around and sell. And if you continue to steal their cash, then you start affecting their credit rating with the people who are supplying it. You understand me? Mm-hmm. Okay, it got out of control. Same idea here. You need to steal their cash. The way that you steal their cash, YouTube and Google and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these monsters, is the following. Deplatform yourself out of it and find alternatives. You need to understand, I'm dead serious. Carlos Saldivia will be off of all corporate social media by January 1st. Merry Christmas. Steal their cash. Get off their platforms so that way they can't affect you. You won't miss it. Trust me. You rarely miss things you give up. Rarely. I don't miss smoking. At all. Gave it up. Final thoughts.
So, yeah, here we are. I'm glad that I had so many leftists on the chat today. It's good. It's good to see the hypocrisy. People that say, "Oh, if you correctly point out how our one-sided approach to advocating violence or being silent on it will predictably lead to the other side adopting the same. That's you advocating for war." Or we had people that said, if you don't denounce capitalism, then you're responsible. You have blood in your hands from the people that died. Because they're basically
so uninteresting.
Right.
It's so uninteresting.
They're proving the point that I'm making, that none of this was about actually saving lives. It's about their political ideology. That's what it was about from the get-go. That's exactly what it's about. And so when we see these people, and there's other people that I can see in the chat right now, it's very enlightening. Carlos, this is one of my favorites. Just the sheer lying and hypocrisy. If you go to a bar or restaurant, you're selfish. You don't care. I said, oh, that's interesting. Do you say the same of Black Lives Matter? Oh, I don't talk to Black Lives Matter. Well, now's your chance. Or, oh, the Black Lives Matter rallies all stood 6 feet apart. Ignore your lying eyes. The thousands upon thousands of pictures you could see with them not standing 6 feet apart. Ignore that. Right? This is the world we live in now. This is who these people are. They are total hypocrites. They're liars. They can't be honest. I actually have respect more for someone who's just like, yeah, I'm a communist. Yeah, I believe the rules shouldn't apply to me. At least I kind of understand where that's coming from. Than these sniveling cowards that'll say things like, oh, yeah, no, I never mentioned the Russia thing. I never mentioned that. Oh, no. All of the Black Lives Matter rallies I attended, we all stood 6 feet apart. Oh, yeah, trust us. Oh, no, I was vocal against the violence when I saw Black Lives Matter doing. You're lying.
Right.
They're lying. That's who these people are. They're lying to you unabashedly because they don't care, because they think they're better than you. That's who these people
exactly
are.
Right.
That's what these leftist people, it's okay to lie to you because in their heart, they know better than you. They're more moral than you. So it's okay for them to be hypocrites. It's okay for them to lie. It's okay for them to force things upon you that they are unwilling to do themselves. Like Tom Wolfe. It's okay. Tom Wolfe knows he's better than you. It's okay for Tom Wolfe to call you a coward if you lost your home and lost your livelihood. Because you have to follow his orders. Even if there's not science behind them, you have to follow it. Of course, he could violate those orders whenever he feels like it. He didn't call himself a coward. He didn't advocate that his business license be pulled. Nope, that's what he did to the people that wanted to, provide for their families.
It's not him that's the problem, Rob. It's you.
Right. And that's what we see with these hypocrites. Now, I get it. I get to the one person here. Oh, no, I did everything right. No, you didn't. There isn't one person, not one person. And I've had this argument. This is how arrogant and self-righteous these people are. I did everything right. Everything under COVID. I wore a mask every single second of every single day, and I didn't leave my house for 9 months. You're a liar.
So did the governor.
You're a liar. Right, you're a liar.
And he got COVID.
There is not one person that did everything perfect. Even if you tried your best, I'll bet you made that extra trip to Walmart that you didn't really need. You could have just waited for that order for the end of the week.
He's so good that he's even better than COVID is. That's how good he is.
Right.
He's smarter than COVID and better at COVID. He's a better person than COVID is.
The difference is...
That's how good he is.
The difference is this. I'm advocating that people, until the government can definitively prove that it will equally apply restrictions to our rights and to our economy in a way that is succinct, that is measured, that will end in a predictable time slot, that they have no right to do so. And they haven't came close. And yes, I do lump in Republicans that have advocated for those lockdowns, as I criticized Donald Trump when he spoke favorably of lockdowns early in March. So I have been equal to point. The difference is this. I'll admit that I could have done more. I'm not the one here lying, saying everything I did was 6 feet apart and blah, 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 blah. I tried to wear a mask. I think that every time I was in a store, I wore a mask. Maybe not, though. I don't know. I didn't go out to many events, but I could have done better. I know that. And the same is true of anyone. The difference is I leave it up to people's personal freedom and responsibility. I don't say, oh, the person at the Black Lives Matter rally, that's why I got COVID. Because there was hundreds of people in my town that refused to adhere to the orders. And they had a BLM rally, and then I got COVID and was jeopardized. You won't hear me say that. You know what I did? I didn't go to the Black Lives Matter rally. Problem solved. Then I didn't get COVID there. I'm sick and tired of people that think that they're your moral superior, that they can engage in this sort of hypocrisy, that'll blatantly lie to you and obfuscate. Oh no, I don't talk to Black Lives Matter. I only talk to people that, want to go to a bar or restaurant. They're the people. I haven't had my opportunity to speak to Black Lives Matter. I deal with this crap over and over and over on the left. Just don't be a hypocrite. It's not that hard. I don't think you should go to a bar. Oh, really? Do you think the same thing of Black Lives Matter? They shouldn't have gone to rallies? Yeah, I think that. See how hard that was? But you couldn't say that, could you? Yeah. Oh, I didn't have an opportunity to speak to them.
They can't.
Why am I talking about Black Lives Matter? Because thousands of medical experts told us that if we didn't listen to them, millions of people would die from COVID. And then in the next breath said, and that's bad, but white supremacy is worse. So go ahead and go violate the orders for that. When we talk about, other countries did better than the United States, what did they do different? I already went through this on my channel, but let's talk about it. The three things, New Zealand, which is an island, by the way, but that was what the left used to use as the model for how we should have behaved. New Zealand did three things.
So the numbers started going the wrong way.
Right. New Zealand did three things. The third and least important that they listed was access to testing and things like that, which I agree, you could criticize Republicans and Democrats. We should have had and still should have better testing. Okay, great. Number two, they social distanced. Do you think that New Zealand had thousands of health experts telling their people, go ahead and go out by the hundreds of thousands of protests for George Floyd? You think they did that? That's what our country did. And you know what the number one thing New Zealand did was? You ready? They banned travel from places like China. You know, the same thing that the health experts like in the World Health Organization told us was xenophobic. So before you say, the problem is that small businesses wanted to be open. That's the problem. The problem was Trump supporters didn't want to wear masks. Why don't you look at what your own side, the hypocrisy that they've engaged in? Now we're giving out vaccines. The CDC is admitting 0.5% to 2% more people will die according to their own numbers because they want to feel good and not give the vaccine to white people. Isn't that excellent? Yeah, all the leftists on the chat here, did one person say, my God, that's horrific? Nope. Why? Because that would go against their racist ideology, their critical race theory, their identity politics. So they have to remain silent. Oh, that can't be what the CDC said. It is what they said. There must be a good reason for it. You people are pathetic. You're willing stooges. You think that you're fighting for the working class people, and the very policies that you're advocating for are the largest transfer of wealth that we've seen in this country in decades.
Right. The dumbest, most contemptible idiots ever are going to defend us. No. All right. So I guess what I want to say in closing today is that many of the precepts that Rob and I talked about today are surrounded by two core main ideas: honesty and trust. You will never be the reason why trust is the coin of the realm is because it's based in a bath of honesty. We will never trust you if you can't be honest. That's why we don't give a crap about comments on YouTube. You're not honest. You don't matter. We look forward to pounding the crap out of your ideas. It's not personal to us. We don't see black and white. None of us. To a person, including the homemade Latino here, none of us cares about race. It's uninteresting. We care about ideas, and we care about action, and we care about those things being executed honestly, because that's the only way we'll ever be able to trust you. If you can't tell us the truth, especially the brutal truth, we will never trust you. Get that through your thick skull. That being said, this week, one of the things I wanted to make sure that I shared with you is that we all need to do better at being better consumers of information. There's a person that I know that's in my life who paid service in the Marine Corps. And we got into a discussion this week about Donald Trump and the election. And he reliably informed me unequivocally, and he's a Republican, a conservative, that there was no voter fraud because, are you ready for this? The courts said so. So Trump should stop being a crybaby. That's what he said. A conservative that believes because the Supreme Court and all these other courts around the country refused to take these cases and threw them summarily out of their courtroom, he believes that that's proof that there is no voter fraud. If you people only understood what these legal maneuvers meant. You need to become better consumers of information. You need to do the hard work to find out where the sources of valid information are. Glenn Greenwald, Aaron Mattei, Matt, what's the name of that guy, Matt?
Taibbi.
Taibbi.
Yep.
Kim Strassel, Molly Hemingway, John Solomon. These are not corporations. These are individual people, 3 on the left and 3 on the right, that you can trust because they're honest. You need to do the hard work to defend your own liberty and to become a better consumer of information. And I will give you just one example. Look at the horrifying numbers that are coming out of Nevada. Horrifying. People that voted twice. People that were from other states that voted in state. It is the worst thing that's ever happened in our country. I need you to remember that optimism doesn't come from an easy life. You need to do the hard work. That being said, I want to make sure that I thank Robert Knorr and Todd Bartlett, and remember that be happy. The greatest tools that you have, these are the tools, these are the chess moves. Be happy. Be good. Do right. And never quit. See you next week.